Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. A messy Qatar Grand Prix saw Max Verstappen win from the front row. However, the race stewards, penalties, and a lack of action has raised serious doubts about the officiating ability of the FIA. Kobe Lambeth is with me from Grid tonight. I'm Joe Samaniego. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin Shell, Mark Rom, David Matthew, or invest in the Grid Network. Link in the video description. Invest through us because 2025 is around the corner. In fact, it starts next Saturday. Formula E. We'll get into that later on. And of course, buy me a coffee, YouTube super chat. Appreciate it for a one-time investment. Kobe, this race, only race of the weekend plus the sprint. Looked like it was going to be a quiet weekend. And of course, Thanksgiving, people recovering from food coma, all that turkey. But this race, I feel it's clear evidence that the FIA under Mohammed Ben Sulayem is in turmoil. The day after the news about the handling of the race director roles, the mess that he has created, Qatar saw early trouble with an unusual penalty for Max Verstappen after he claimed the pole for going too slow on the cooldown lap, a one-place grid penalty. I remember scratching my head when I saw that update. But then there was more trouble that laid ahead, including what everybody will remember, a small piece from a wing mirror. The mirror on the track, left on the track on the main straightaway, entering turn one, which is the only DRS zone, the best passing opportunity, not called for at all. Then we see Valtteri Bottas run over it as he was letting some of the leaders go by. Smashes it into smaller pieces. No action. Carlos Sainz, a flat tire. Lewis Hamilton ran over it, a flat tire. The safety car finally showed up, but the big drama was when Lando Norris, during all this, handed a 10-second stop-and-go penalty, one of the harshest penalties for failing to slow down under the yellow. Full car safety car was when that occurred. And then we saw Lewis Hamilton get a penalty for a drive-through penalty. And at this point, watching it from F1 TV, the announcers again were overly harsh. The F1 team, they were appalled by the race stewards. And of course, that's Julian Palmer, David Coulthard. All of them from F1 TV were just appalled by everything going on. Where was the consistency? What's going on? How appalling, Kobe, was the officiating? Does this push the F1 teams and the drivers to ask for a change in the FIA leadership?
Joe, this is just the latest episode of what's been going on with the FIA president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, and just race officiating, Formula One in general. It was extremely appalling, Joe. Actually, I think the word you used, appalling, is an understatement. How awful the officiating was during the Qatar Grand Prix, and we all saw the mirror on the track, and everybody was thinking, "Oh, that's going to be a safety car, without a doubt," And then they keep racing. And then boom, Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton, end up being victims of that situation, end up ruining both of their races there. Lewis and Carlos did their best to try to recover in the end, but they certainly lost a handful of positions during that. And it was a super unfortunate, that something like that happened. Can you imagine if it was the race leader, Max Verstappen, running over that? And, then he has a puncture just like Sainz and Hamilton did, and then Max ended up losing the race over something like this. It was clearly, in the line of sight there, and it was a safety hazard. So I don't understand why they delayed throwing the safety car until someone ended up suffering from it. That was a massive mistake on the part of race control there, an epic fail. And Lando Norris, I guess it's a matter of fact that a 10-second stop and go penalty for that is probably way too harsh. And if Ferrari ends up winning the constructor championship after Abu Dhabi, a lot of people are going to look back at this situation and being like, yep, this is exactly what cost McLaren the constructors in the end, because I feel like for what he was penalized for, 10 and go, 10-second penalty was extremely harsh in these circumstances. But overall, it's just been a really, not just a crazy race day for the FIA, been a crazy race week, because we've been seeing a lot of things that have been happening. As we already know, a lot of the drivers have been frustrated with Mohammed Ben Sulayem and his leadership, or lack thereof. And Sulayem responded in the media to the drivers' criticism of how he's running by the FIA. And he basically told them that it's none of their business how he runs things. So he's acting. I hate to use this word, but he's honestly, and I think Joshua Birch from Grid Tonight would agree with us. If Mohammed Ben Sulayem is starting to act like a dictator in this situation. I don't like using those words like dictator, but that's exactly what he's acting like. He's acting like that this is his playground, and he's the king of the playground, the big bad bully, whatever you want to call him. But Mohammed Ben Sulayem seems to be way over his head right now. And the funny part about this is, he said, with all due respect, I am a driver, so I respect the driver. Then he said, let them go out there and concentrate. So he's saying just because that he's a driver, that he knows what's best for the drivers. But the thing is, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, he was never a Formula One driver, or even come close to being a Formula One driver. So he doesn't have the best understanding of these circumstances. If he was a Formula One driver, he probably had more credibility in this area. But so far, he's just made all the wrong decisions, and just I think he's really tearing down the FIA internally, as we've seen with a lot of turmoil and changes that's been happening behind the scenes over the last several months or so. This has been really crazy to see how he's responding to the driver. Instead of trying to have an open and honest conversation with them, he's literally just saying that this is none of your business, how I run the FIA, and that you just need to focus on driving and all of that. So I really don't understand why he's acting that way, but it is really frustrating. And then the real funny part about this whole situation, after saying that it was none of their business, he said, do we have to tell them when we make changes at the FIA? He said when the team make changes, they don't tell us. So basically, he's saying that just because the teams don't tell the FIA when they make personnel changes, he don't have to explain his reasoning to anyone, to the teams or the media, why they're making changes or doing something a certain way with the FIA. And that's not the only thing that's been going on here. With Roy Marquez moving up to be the F1 race steward, replacing Niels Vittich, Janet Tam was supposed to be the race director for FIA Formula 2 race weekend. But guess what? Before she was able to make her debut at that, she ended up getting fired, which was, super unfortunate situation. And given how Mohammed Ben Sulayem handled the Susie Wolf situation, in the preseason before we got into this year of racing, you have to ask yourself, like, was Mohammed Ben Sulayem intimidated by the fact, that she was a woman in a powerful position? He been a race steward. I don't like to bring that up, but given his history, you have to wonder that as well. And also, a long-time FIA race steward Tim Meyer was also sacked along with Tan, and it makes you wonder what on earth is going on. But all in all, Joe, I think everybody is just sick and tired of Mohammed Ben Sulayem and his leadership and the direction he's leading Formula One down. Honestly, I think like I said, he's tearing down the FIA internally, and he's leading the sport right off the edge of a cliff. And for all of the people who voted for Mohammed Ben Sulayem to be the next president of the FIA, I want to ask you, what were you thinking? Did he say all the right things and trick you guys? Because I honestly don't think he's really been a really helpful addition to the sport. And every time I see his name in the media, him doing something, I always think to myself, I'd give anything to have Jean Todt back as the president of the FIA. I don't know if he always did the right things or anything like that, but Jean Todt, under his leadership, the FIA ran a steady ship, and you never saw the amount of drama that we're seeing now. It just seems like that everyone is just sick and tired of Mohammed Ben Sulayem, and I believe it's time for a change.
There has to be a change. As you said, what he's doing to the FIA, he is also just destroying the credibility this organization have, and I felt it had a lot of credibility under John Todt. Was it perfect? No. I mean, being the FIA president is so much work throughout the entire scope of the FIA. Everything involving motorsports, consumer vehicles, all that. And in that election, I still remember thinking, okay, he's saying all the right things. He comes into office. He opens an investigation into what happened in Abu Dhabi 2021. But then it just started going downhill and has now gone off a cliff. This race, let's be honest, the start, that's a typical, what we see occasionally on some races where you have a first corner, first lap crash. One of those deals, Nico Hülkenberg made a mistake, took out Ocon and Carlos Pinto. Then you had pretty much straightforward racing until this rear mirror getting onto the track and nothing. You have the virtual safety car. You could have called that, have somebody run out, pick that up. You could have done the safety car if needed, drive everyone through pit road like they did for maybe 1 or 2 laps. They've had the options, the resources to make that decision. They didn't do it until it was too late, and not only was it too late, the cleanup took more laps away because we had to clean up a smashed up mirror. This was just a horrendous race, in my opinion, where the officiating altered the outcome of this race for Carlos Sainz, for Lewis Hamilton. For Lando Norris, that penalty just seems way harsh. I just couldn't believe that. One of the big things is if we see this again next weekend, I think the calls will be mounted. There needs to be a change. If anything, the Drivers Association, the F1 teams, Formula One management, Liberty Media, they got to get this cleaned up with the FIA. And I still remember, I don't know if you remember, Kobe, a few years ago in the gala where Ben was there and he said, "We just followed the rules you all agreed to," just trying to. He has just been dropping the ball so to the point where he's done more harm than good in his tenure. There's nothing positive I could say coming out of this. I mean, even the work he done after Abu Dhabi 2021, we'll have 2 race stewards. We're going to clean up. Here we are, 1 race steward. Well, now it's a revolving chair. It's even worse. What have you done? He has to go. It ruined the race. It manipulated the outcome essentially if you're McLaren drivers and the Mercedes drivers, because that mirror could have been taken away easily. But nope, we waited for a bigger mess, and on social media, the uproar from that was something else. So the FIA, that's going to be something else. And with Formula E around the corner, the mess over a World Rally Championship, unpleasant times for the FIA. After the race, Max Verstappen, after he got the win, which overshadowed by everything, but he did win, which originally was going to be from the pole, but then that penalty, so he's still in front row, gets the win, controlled the race. His team radio, "Karma is a beautiful thing." Now, one assumes this was in response to the FIA penalty and overcoming the mess they created by giving him a 1-place grid penalty for being too slow on the cooldown lap, which I never thought was an issue. But we also saw the potential battle for the win taken away when Lando was penalized for that stop and go. He did not have that great of a restart. Lando Norris was there. We know the McLaren speed. But at the end of the day, nothing came out of that. But we know what happened the day before. Lando Norris led every lap. Oscar Piastri, second place. Lando Norris giving DRS to help Oscar keep second place away from George Russell. Final lap, final corner. Lando Norris pulls to the side. Oscar Piastri goes by, gets the win. Papaya rules, team orders determining the sprint race winner. Again, people not happy about this. The team orders, we know it's part of motorsports, Kobe, and it's not popular at all. Do you feel this move by McLaren was necessary after the Brazilian sprint race swap?
Well, I'm just gonna be honest. It seems entirely stupid, doesn't it? Like, what point? What does it change? Oscar Piastri is not gonna catch Lando Norris at all in the points. It's not. It still would have been the same result one way or the other, because it's not gonna do anything with them in the constructor standings either. Have a massive effect. So I don't understand what this was. Maybe since the team has obviously prioritized Lando, in the championship battle with Max, since Lando was obviously a lot closer. Maybe that this was a thank you gesture to Oscar Piastri, from being a good so-called wingman for Lando throughout the season while they prioritize him over on Piastri. So that's the only thing I can really think of, like, why they would do something like this. But then who really knows? Because it just didn't really make much sense to me. But I guess this is a way of being like, thank you, Oscar, for being a good teammate to Lando, so we'll let you get a sprint race victory, because I don't really have anything else. And I also wanted to add one point I looked up while you were talking, Joe, about the FIA president. It's just like a U.S. presidential election. Every 4 years, you elect a new FIA president. So Mohammed Ben Sulayem will be up for re-election next year, and so I'm sure he's probably going to have a lot of competition next year. And if people are smart, he won't win re-election, or maybe he'll just decide to bow out, and say, I'm not going to run for re-election. So I know we were talking about Mohammed Ben Sulayem, needing to be replaced. Since he has, one more year coming up with his final with the year number 4 in 2025. Like, I guess the question is, do we just let him, finish out his first term and then go on to a new FI president, or do we just try to, get rid of him beforehand? And I don't know what the process is about removing an FI president, or him just, frankly, just resigning.
It's something else with everything. I just remember the last race, I believe it was Graham Stoker that ran against Ben. They had different campaigns and everything. Boy, if people could look back and it's like, okay, maybe we should have gone vote for Graham instead. It's just one of those deals where I think a lot of folks are going to be following what's going to happen in this new election coming up next year, because his term will be up. And then as for the team orders, I have to agree with you, Kobe. I just don't get what McLaren's doing at this point. Yes, we know the championship's over. If this was just a, hey, we're equal now after we swapped the results at Brazil, well, okay, that's great and all, but let's now just straightforward race. No more team orders, no more papaya rules. This is getting to the ridiculous. What's going on, McLaren? If you want to be the constructors champion, if you want to have one of your drivers win the world championships, 2025, get your head straight. Just go out there. Whoever qualifies ahead, they're going to get the preferred strategy. They're going to get the preferred tire setup. But let's not do this. Well, who's the number one? Who's number two? What's going to be fair? Just run the race. I think there's been a distraction all year that caused some of the mess ups in strategy, such as Silverstone, where they could have easily had a 1-2 that went away. I just don't get why they had to pull this move. If anything, this move would have not been possible if Oscar Piastri could not hold off George Russell. George Russell was in the middle. Lando Norris gets the win, all over. What would McLaren do? Would they still be talking about, oh, we got to give Oscar his win back? Come on now. Championship's over. This isn't a hunt for the championship where you needed a driver to finish ahead to get a million points for the driver's championship. This was just not a smart move. Sort of reminded me of Austria when Ferrari last lap, Ruben Barrichello gave the win away for Michael Schumacher. He already has the points lead. Ruben Barrichello was the only driver ahead of him. It just did not make sense. Left a sour taste in everyone's mouth, and I believe this finish will do that as well. Long-term McLaren, they now lead Ferrari into the final race weekend of the Constructors' Championships. They are down to those two teams only. But one of the battles for the Constructors' title is occurring down in 6th place with Alpine. Kobe, ever since the Brazilian Grand Prix with the Alpines got the double podiums, they're all of a sudden in this. But here's the thing. While Gasly had a great 5th place finish today, scored points, Esteban Ocon caught up in that first lap crash. He was out. First lap, no points, nothing he could do. After the race, multiple media outlets are reporting that Jack Doohan is set to make his F1 debut, and Esteban Ocon will be replaced for Abu Dhabi. Some citing because of the Haas agreement and for Ocon to be in the preseason testing. But does this move make any sense? You're going to be going for 6th in the championship of the constructors. Alpine, Haas, all right there, and you're making this driver's move. Does this make sense at all?
No, not at all. But given what's been happening with Alpine the last couple of years, what does make sense with this organization? Because if you've been watching our programs for the last year, on Grid Tonight, we've often talked about a lot of the turmoil that's been going on at Alpine with team leadership and how dysfunctional it is seen. But the only thing I can really think of in this situation, Joe, is I think Alpine is just sick and tired of Esteban Ocon. I think that's really what it is, that they just don't want to do one more week with him. And it's no secret that him and Pierre Gasly, have been friends turned rivals. They've been rivals, for quite a while now, and the two haven't really gotten along or liked each other. So, and that within itself, is not good for the team. And then, Ocon's, been frustrating Alpine as well. And then I guess after today, they're like, you know what, Jack Doohan's coming in next year. We might as well just get a head start on 2025. And I don't, and since Jack Doohan is, as a rookie, as we've seen time and time again, it's really hard, to just come in like this, just pop in an F1 car when everybody else has been racing all throughout the year. When Jack Doohan, has just been their test and reserve driver, not out there competing week in and week out in these Formula One cars. So I really don't think this had anything to do with the constructor. I think Alpine just wants to get a head start on 2025 so they can start working with Jack Doohan and building chemistry towards next year. And I think they're just done with Esteban Ocon, so they just want to just get rid of him right then, right now.
Ocon not delivering this race. It's just unfortunate to see all the talk about Esteban Ocon with Alpine sort of end this way. The rivalry between those two drivers, they managed to put that aside for Brazil post race, but you don't just erase years of rivalry with a second and third place finish in wet, rainy conditions. All sorts of mayhem going on with Alpine. It'll be really interesting to see how that battle is going to contend. Who will take second place? Sixth place. Well, we'll find out who's going to take second place. It's going to be either Ferrari or the McLaren, because the other one will be the first place driver. And of course, that's all going to be part of Abu Dhabi, which is the last race of the year. And for many, most likely Sergio Perez last race of the year is what is expected, because again, this is just getting to a point from embarrassing to just painful to watch. It's just, what is he going to do now to mess up? A blunder in the pit lane starting spot. I'm sorry, Kobe. I know they said the tires were cold or some spin. The light was green. 4 seconds, and then finally Pinto got around him. He made Q3, but then he spun out during the race. I don't recall if they said it was mechanical or he just lost it with cold tires. And here's the crazy part. It was brought up. We saw Joe Guan Yu scored 4 points today. First time for Sauber, first time for him. 4 points. That equals the number of points Sergio Perez has scored in the past 5 race weekends. Does Perez need to announce his retirement to have some dignity departing Red Bull? Because, like I said, it's gone from, okay, this is embarrassing, oh, you're having a bad race weekend, to now it's painful. It's like, you're not the driver you used to be anymore.
Yeah, and you want to know the last time we saw Sergio Perez finish on the podium of a Formula One race? The last time was April 21st in the Chinese Grand Prix. It is the 1st of December now. Can you imagine going from April all the way to December and you haven't finished on the podium in a Red Bull car in any Formula One race? Like, I'm sorry, but that's a fireable offense in my opinion, because I know Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, they've obviously caught up to Red Bull. The Red Bull is not as strong as it has been the last couple of years, but still look at Max Verstappen. He's still been able to perform and obviously won a championship and all of that. And Sergio Perez, he's a lot to finish 8th right now in the driver's standings, while his teammate is many points up the road on him. And Sergio Perez's bad performances throughout the season ended up costing Red Bull the Constructors Championship. Given the car that they have, Red Bull should be Constructors Champion, but they're out of it. And they're not going to win it this year because of Sergio Perez, and the blame definitely falls all on his shoulders here. But yeah, I really think it's over. I know he signed that contract extension, and somebody in Red Bull, I don't even know what they were thinking to sign him to a contract extension. And in a way, Joe, it's kind of like, I know we don't like to use stick and ball sports analysis, but it's really like some of these players in, say, the NFL, the NBA. They play really well, and then they get a well-deserved contract extension. As soon as they sign that contract extension, they completely fall off, and they're not who they used to be at all. And it makes you wonder what on earth went wrong. And I'm wondering the same thing with Sergio Perez. He went from being someone who we call king of the streets to being somebody who's nowhere to be seen, going from king of the streets to somebody who's probably going to be walking down the street with his book bag, all alone, because it really seems like that it is completely over at Red Bull. Like I said in previous shows, the lawyers are going to figure out how to get out of this situation legally, and Max Verstappen is almost certainly going to have a new teammate in 2025. I would be absolutely shocked if Sergio Perez is on the grid in 2025 in Melbourne, Australia, to start off next year's Formula One season. But then again, I'm actually shocked that he's finishing out this season because we thought there were many times that they were going to replace him, and I wonder if Red Bull is having some regrets about not replacing him down the stretch, or maybe like a Liam Lawson, a Yuki Tsunoda. I don't know. Well, they already got rid of Daniel Ricciardo, so I don't know what they would have done with him. But yeah, I think it would be really nice for Sergio Perez to announce his retirement from Formula One and go out with some dignity, because it's been definitely a humiliating situation for them. And I really hate that for Sergio Perez, because he seems like really nice person and all of that, but he just hasn't lived up to the expectation of what it means to be a Red Bull Formula One driver, driving a world championship winning car like this. His performance has just been unacceptable. I don't know how your last podium in Formula One in this type of car is, on April 21st, and we are on December 1st. It doesn't really make sense. Like I said, that's a fireable offense in my opinion.
A fireable offense. And the thing, too, we saw last year, he got second place in the Drivers' Championship. He had bad races here and there, but he got the podiums, he got the wins. We've seen what he could do. And this year, as you said, it's very much, I think, as you compare to other sports, you signed that contract, this is going to be a big deal. And then you just literally drop the ball. I just saw then, okay, it's Montreal. We know with the weather, the nature of that race, that circuit, maybe it was just an off weekend, but it's embarrassing because he just signed his contract extension. Then it proceeded. Then it became maybe it's just the car. Then it became he's making these mistakes. Then he's crashing out. He's not making it to Q3. He's not getting the job done. Then we hear now Red Bull saying like, hey, green means go. Why didn't you go? It's just to the point where, considering his long career here in Formula One, he's been around a long time. He's brought a lot of fans, especially from Mexico. I mean, we all remember the rumors of the FIA Formula One wanting Red Bull to keep Sergio Perez because of the attendance in the Mexico City Grand Prix. Honestly, Red Bull, you're losing the Constructor Championship because you have a driver that cannot bring home the points, that cannot bring home podium finishes. As you said, Kobe, so long since his last podium finish. It's just unacceptable at this point. You can't allow Max Verstappen, because we know they've said it before. It's the constructors that pays the teams more than the drivers' championship. What are we doing here at Red Bull? I mean, it's just Perez. I think the best thing he could do is just say, hey, I'm calling it a career, because this is just getting ridiculous to see. And I got no faith in what he's going to do at Abu Dhabi, a track where everybody remembers he helped Max Verstappen claim his first championship. That's where he got the nickname the Minister of Defense from Mexico, or the Mexican Minister of Defense, by holding up Lewis Hamilton. Now I think he's just going to be, again, mid-pack. He'll be lucky if he scored points and not a factor at all. And it's just interesting because that year, too, I remember we were all thinking Valtteri Bottas was the least performing wing person, because Bottas could not stop Verstappen when he was in the Mercedes or hold him up, and Perez did. Now Perez is easily that second driver that just cannot do anything to help the team, and the team just has to say, we know you got the sponsorships, we know you got this big following, including for one particular race, but for the betterment of our team and our finances, we got to split ways and we got to figure out something. And of course, Red Bull, not a Constructors Championship. Of course, Max Verstappen got the Drivers' Championship. But that wasn't easy either. He definitely different from last year. Of course, he got his 9th win of the year, but this year, 7 drivers have won a race multiple times. From Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz, and the 2 Mercedes drivers of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Which, by the way, looks like Russell and Max Verstappen are not exactly the best of friends. They won't be exchanging Christmas cards anytime soon. Constructors just started off as looking like it will be the Red Bull show. Here comes McLaren. Now Ferrari is coming down to the final race. We've had some good stories. Even with Williams, unfortunately, they've had a rough season. Another torn up car again, but Franco Colapinto shows some promise. put himself in the rumors for Red Bull. Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz are going to be back next year. What's going on with so many good storylines. We're even coming off Las Vegas. Pretty good race. Coming off the news, Cadillac's coming in. But this officiating mess from the FIA, the mess in the FIA, I feel this is starting to overshadow everything. It overshadowed this race. Considering we're just coming off Las Vegas, the big news of Cadillac coming, but we have this mess. Could this end the F1 season on such a sour note to hurt fan interest in F1 and especially in the United States?
Well, I'm not really sure what it's going to do about fan interest. If you watch that Las Vegas Grand Prix, it seems like American Formula One fans, are still all in. Yeah, look at Miami, look at the attendance at COTA. People are still crazy about Formula One. So despite all of the craziness going on, I think maybe you might lose some fans, but I think people are just so crazy into Formula One here in the United States that you're probably not going to lose the majority of the fan base, but I think like anything, you're probably going to lose, some here and there. But yeah, it's real unfortunate, that the season is going to end on a sour note here. Yeah, I think we should be getting excited about the next season, given that the gap the Red Bull is closed and hoping that the other teams, can continue to work on their car to make it even better next season. The dream would be have like a 2021 style title fight, that keeps you on the edge of your seat and looking forward to every single Grand Prix moving forward instead of just someone running away with the entire championship. But yeah, I think the dark cloud that's going to be hanging above Formula One's head is going to be the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem and all of the things that have been going on under his leadership that's really undermining the credibility integrity of the sport, which is leading to drivers getting frustrated about the whole situation. Fans are getting frustrated, and it's just been a really difficult situation to close out the season when we're not even talking about the race in itself. We're talking about all the drama happening off the track and behind the scenes. Yeah, it's a real frustrating situation here for Formula One to be in.
Very frustrating. A lot of potentials to be remembered as a great season, especially after the domination of Max Verstappen, which was on a whole nother level. But this is going to get people, I think, we've seen it in the sports here and there, officiating, make bad calls, impact the outcome of a game or in a race. But this is to the point where it's like there's clearly management issues in the FIA. There's clearly turmoil there. This president does not seem to have the right vision of where he wants to take it. And it's hurting the Formula One. And Formula One, they got a lot of positive momentum, and this is just going to overshadow it. Hopefully, Abu Dhabi has no drama like 2021 with the officiating, but at least just good racing to end it on a positive note. Be really interested to see who claims the Constructors' Championship. Can Alpine hold on to 6? And let's see who wins the race, because it may not be a Red Bull. Speaking about that, let's go to the grid ranking, Kobe.
Yeah, and looking at the grid ranking this week, it doesn't have any changes in the top 10 position as Max Verstappen maintains 4th place, and he's likely to remain there. However, outside the top 10, Lando Norris was overtaken by Charles Leclerc earlier this year. Our own Ben Snyder from Grid Encore said that Norris was not ready to be a champion, and ironically enough, Lando actually agreed with him, saying the same thing, shortly after Ben said that himself. So many polls, but no wins from them to show, and Lando's also made plenty of mistakes. Do you agree that he wasn't ready yet, and do you think Lando will be ready to truly be a world champion and fight for the championship in 2025?
Yeah, I think Lando was easily not ready. I'll also say this as well too. McLaren is not ready to be champions of a constructors or having a driver, because Lando Norris made those mistakes. He made a lot of moves where it just did not go his way. But at the same time, let's be honest, the team has also done that too, through the strategy, through these weird team rule games, the lack of decisiveness. They essentially put themselves in the spot where they may lose the constructors to Ferrari. Ferrari has been outscoring them the last few races, and really, it could have been a lot different if Carlos Sainz did not get that flat tire. And of course, they about had one hand on the championship until Lando Norris did not slow down under the yellow for the safety car. So really, combined, I feel they were just not prepared to be this high up. and the pressure on them. And I think it really shows the difference in pressure from being a midfield to we just want to get the highest we can to you're expected to go out there, win this race, win for the championship. They were just not prepared. And for 2025, they better be prepared. Ferrari's going to be ready. They got Charles Leclerc again. They're going to have Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time champion. He's going to bring a lot of skills. Red Bull, it'll be interesting to see what they could figure out for next year, especially if Sergio Perez is out of the picture and they got another driver. Could be potential hope for Constructors Championship. Mercedes, they're going to have a rookie that's going to be very keen on seeing what happens with that rookie. If that rookie could just score points, keep it out of trouble, and George Russell could go out there, contend for wins, they're going to be in a good spot. Really, they have to be ready because the competition is looking stacked next year with everybody running hard. And of course, you might get the Constructor Championship. That's great if you do that, McLaren. But that's less wind tunnel time you're going to get as well, too, compared to the others.
Yeah, and one point I wanted to bring up, you mentioned Lewis Hamilton going over to Ferrari. I don't know if you saw comments he made over the Qatar Grand Prix race weekend, Joe, but it sounded like Lewis has lost a bit of confidence in his ability behind the wheel of a race car because he admitted, I'm not as fast as I used to be. And it makes me wonder, is he feeling that way because, the Mercedes, car has been through, some difficult times since 2021. And also since, George Russell's been getting the best of him. It's been a lame duck year for him at Mercedes. Maybe hasn't been getting, like the I guess the top attention on the race car. I wonder if that's it, or has Lewis Hamilton truly lost a step? And we've seen what happens to drivers who go to Ferrari and lose a step. I don't want Lewis Hamilton to end up like Sebastian Vettel, how he ended, his tenure at Ferrari in a real unfortunate way. We remember Sebastian Vettel had a head full of hair when he was at Red Bull, and then he went to Ferrari and it looked like he was starting to go bald. And as soon as he left Ferrari, his hair started to grow back again. I don't want that to be a situation with Lewis, but that's certainly something to watch for next year to see if Lewis has truly lost a step or he just needs to regain the confidence behind the wheel of a race car. But in regards to Lando Norris, I agree with everything you said, Joe. I think sometimes in order to win championships, you have to lose them first and find out what you need to do better next time. And I think Lando would definitely benefit, from everything he's been through this year. And if McLaren brings him a really good car for next year, I think he'll certainly be in the fight for the world championship. But I also agree that McLaren's not ready, to contend for a championship either. And they very well might win the Constructors Championship anyways. They've definitely made a lot of questionable calls. But I think Zach Brown alluded to this earlier this season that, the reason why McLaren's been the way they are in calling these races is because they haven't been in this position in a very long time. Red Bull, been masters, at winning races because they've been doing it. Mercedes for the longest time, they have experience doing this, but McLaren's been like, almost a whole decade since they've been in this type of position to do something like this. So, well, over a decade for McLaren. So this is something that the team is going to have to learn over time of how to manage these races and how to properly fight for a world championship as a team. But like anything, you need to get practice reps. And if McLaren, keep doing what they're doing, they're eventually going to get it right at the end of the day. And with that said, it's time for our Group 1 shining moment from this racing weekend. Let us know in the chat below what's something from the Qatar Grand Prix or any other type of racing that happened this weekend. Let us know what was the one thing that stood out to you in your mind. And Joe, I'm going to let you go first.
My shining moment, I mentioned him earlier in the show. Guan Yu Zhou, what an effort. 12th place qualifying effort. Best of the year. Goes out there. We know there was some lucky circumstances with Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris all falling out of the top 10 for a while. Then he gets himself into the top 10, and he stayed there throughout the race where we had drivers making mistakes, veteran drivers like Nico Hulkenberg spinning around, taking himself out, where we had the chaos of the safety cars and the debris. He did what he needed to do. Run his own race, keep it out of trouble, keep the car in one piece, and bring it home. He did that. 4 points for him. He is on his way out from being a F1 driver on the grid, potentially a reserve role somewhere. But this has to be feeling like a win. And especially one of the things, of course, we know he got in Formula One with the pandemic. He didn't really get to race in his home country Chinese Grand Prix until this year when he finally did in a lousy Sauber car. Well, now that Sauber car, he breaks it to its first points of the year. That is something to say. That was my achievement in 2024. It's not the season we wanted, but this is what we achieved. That is my shining moment.
Yeah, definitely really happy for Joe Guan Yu there. Like you say, Joe been a tough, couple of years in his Formula One career. Remember the highlight so far has, been him getting to be a Chinese driver running the Chinese Grand Prix. That was so special for him. Remember how excited he was to do that, and now to finally get Sauber on the board in the constructors and score points for them. Definitely real special moment. Right there as well. And next year, obviously not going to be in Formula One. Rumors suggest that he could be the test and reserve driver for Ferrari next year, which would be good for him to be in that program, and maybe we'll see Joe Guan Yu return to the Formula One grid in future seasons to come. And also remember, he used to be a Ferrari Academy driver, so he's no stranger to how Ferrari operates and all that. So maybe that'll be a good place for him in 2025. But my one shining moment actually doesn't come from the Formula One race. Actually, if you follow grassroots dirt track racing, you might know the name Jason Pursley. He's my shining moment because of everything he's been through in the last few years and what he did this racing weekend. If you know Jason Pursley's story, remember he was involved in a really bad accident, where he had to go to the hospital, have surgery. He ended up suffering a severe spinal cord injury, and he was paralyzed from the neck down, and he had to relearn how to walk. And Jason Pursley, when he was first coming onto the scene, a lot of people were saying like this is going to be the next star, whether he goes the NASCAR route or whether he stays in dirt racing. They said that this kid, Jason Pursley, is going to be a superstar in some form of racing. And then you saw him get injured, and you're like, oh man, it'd be like this. He had so much potential, but his career is over. But you know what, Jason Pursley, he relearned how to walk. He got back in that car, and just a couple of years after suffering an almost career-ending accident, guess what he did this past weekend? He became the 2024 USAT National Midget Champion, and in 2025 he's going to be going to the High Limit Sprint Car Racing Series, which is co-owned by Kyle Larson, and Brad Sweet going to be running sprint cars full time next year after tearing it up in the midget. So I think that is quite a remarkable comeback story for Jason Pursley to go from suffering a severe spinal cord injury, in the hospital recovering, being paralyzed temporarily, not being able to walk. And then you come back just a couple of years later after that life-changing moment, and you become a USAT national champion. Now you're moving up the ladder in dirt racing. I think that is a remarkable story. And if they were to hand out a comeback driver of the year award, I would definitely give it to him. That was such a special moment for Jason Pursley.
Special moment. What a comeback. And of course, definitely encourage everyone to comment with your special moment for our grid. One shining moment. We are coming down to the end of 2024, but that doesn't mean we're not going to be on the air, because Wednesday, Grid Tonight, Kobe will be back on the air, the latest news and updates from around the world. Then Saturday, Grid Life pre-race, and this is unique. Last race for Formula One. We'll preview that, and of course, pick a winner. But then we have Formula E. We're going to have Edward Hunter from Formula E Zone joining us. And of course, pick a winner for Formula E, but it's going to go for the new leaderboard. So this is your opportunity. If you don't participate, if you don't have to lead because you're not Matthew Bro, you can claim the lead of the new pick a winner leaderboard with Formula E that will go over to 2025 for all grid, ranking, and IMSA events. Plus, after next weekend, we'll have Grid Tonight and the last episode of Women in Motorsports to recap the F1 Academy season ending weekend at Abu Dhabi and all the top females throughout 2024. So coming down to the end of it, but be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and invest in the Grid Network. On the show, Mark, Ron, David, and Matthew are investing in us. We're getting ready for 2025 again. It's going to be a fun year. 2024, we've got to more tracks. We're very excited about that accomplishment we've done, and we've got many more ahead. For Kobe Lambeth, I'm Joe San Diego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.